Welcome to the City. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And we are joined today by Lauren Shrum. She is the Principal for Texas Outdoors Consulting. And she recently completed a Parks Master Plan for the City of San Angelo. We're here to talk with her about that. Lauren, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Anthony.
First of all, explain for our audience what a Parks Master Plan is and why it's important.
Well, a Parks Master Plan is not only just a document, but it's actually a process. It involves the public in a particular city, and it involves them in the planning process. It takes an inventory of all the things that are there in the Parks and Recreation Department currently.
Assesses the value and the condition of those parks and facilities. And then it includes public participation in the form of general public meetings or online surveys, stakeholder workshops, those kind of things. Brings all that public participation and that feedback together, and with the assessment, it then looks at best management practices that are out there in other Parks and Recreation departments, combines all that information and creates a master plan. It's basically a framework for the future of the Parks and Recreation department for the next 10 to 15 years. And it's really a tool for staff to utilize in their day-to-day operations. It helps them make decisions. Should I plant this tree here? Should I work on this park next? It gives them guidelines for where they should be working in the next couple of years.
And my understanding is one of the reasons that it's important is not only does it provide you that roadmap, but you have to have this plan in order to apply for a lot of state grants in order to work on the improvements that the plan sort of outlines.
Absolutely, absolutely. And planning in general is important just because it's a roadmap for the future, but in particular, this master plan is important because of the fact that certain grant opportunities through the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department require a master plan be in place before they will fund projects. They want to see that communities have a framework in place before they give you millions of dollars to implement in your parks. So that's critical for those grants. And a lot of other private foundations and other grant opportunities also like to see that there is a plan in place, that the community has taken that time to involve the public and has a roadmap for their future.
You mentioned that obviously you spent months inventorying all the assets of our Parks and Recreation system, surveying those, cataloging those. Mm-hmm. Tell me what about our Parks and Recreation system impressed you? What are the things that our Parks and Recreation system is doing right?
Well, for one thing, a tremendous opportunity here in San Angelo is the parks and green spaces along the Concho River. It's a unique situation here in West Texas that San Angelo has those waterways, and they've done a lot already to acquire parkland along the rivers and green space and created a network of trails. So that's one of the major strengths of the park system currently. And they only need to capitalize on that in the future. And another strength is the fact that there is quite a bit of city-owned land along the other branches of the Concho River that are yet to be developed, and that holds a huge potential opportunity for more trails along the river corridors and more public spaces for people to enjoy.
Along with those important assets, of course, we do have challenges. What did you find were the greatest challenges that our Parks and Recreation system is facing in providing the level of service that people want and need?
One of the biggest challenges is, of course, maintaining what is already in existence. In terms of some of the parks, there's quite a few that were built. There was a heyday of park building in the 60s and 70s in San Angelo, and since that time, those are coming up now for maintenance, and there's a lot of renovations that need to happen. So there is quite a few parks on the list to be up for renovations. So that's one of the biggest challenges, finding the funding to make those renovations happen. So there is funding out there for things to do those renovations, but there's also community groups out there who are really excited about their neighborhood park, and their stakeholder groups who are excited about skateboarding or dog parks or that kind of thing, and they are ready to assist and help and volunteer labor to help create the renovations. I mean, things can be done on a small scale. It doesn't always have to be a multi-million-dollar large-scale renovation project, but things can be done on a small scale to help make the parks that San Angelo does have better.
Along with surveying all of the assets in the park system, you spent a lot of time gathering input from the public. Generally, what was the perception that the public had of our Parks and Recreation system?
Generally, it's great. San Angeloans love their parks. They were very happy with a lot of things that are going on. They do feel, however, throughout the survey, there was strong results for adding more multi-use hike and bike trails and linear parks. So like I talked earlier about the tremendous opportunity along the river branches here with the undeveloped land, It's a perfect fit for the needs that were represented in the survey, where people would like to see more hike and bike trails. There's a lot of places in the city currently where you see people utilizing for that activity of hiking and biking and walking, specifically on Gun Club Hill, around Lake Nasworthy, those types of things. So there is a need for more of that in San Angelo. Also in the survey, we found that people were really feeling strongly about more outdoor recreation activities. If we asked them if we could provide some programs through the recreation department, what would you participate in? Strong responses were for canoeing and kayaking, nature study, gardening, more outdoor oriented activities. And it was just really surprising and interesting. It reflects sort of the trend I think that's going on right now in terms of getting back outside, getting kids connected to nature, restoring our busy, hectic lives, getting outside and actually restoring ourselves using nature. So that's something that the Parks and Recreation Department is here for. They can help fulfill that need in people's lives.
So as part of surveying people and gathering their input, I know that you asked them, what are the things that you want most from your park systems, maybe some of the improvements or some of the amenities that we don't currently have. Talk a little bit about what citizens' priorities were.
Thank you. For the priorities, by and far, multi-use hike and bike trails was one of the top priorities that citizens expressed they felt that San Angelo needed. 63% of folks mentioned that. Dog parks came in second. Picnic tables and picnic pavilions came in third, and then canoe and kayak launches came in at fourth. And so I'm really surprised to see the canoe and kayak launches up that high. However, it seems like a lot of people are wanting to do more river recreation, so that's something to consider. And we did have over 500 responses to the online survey, so we got quite a bit of feedback from people.
You mentioned dog parks, and that's something that I personally hear a lot about, people wanting a place where they can take their dogs and let the dogs run and play and have dogs play with one another. Why do you think that touches such a nerve with people here in San Angelo?
Well, I know a lot of people are just huge pet lovers, and so a lot of people actually, their pets are their children or equivalent of, and so they want to be able to take their pets to a place where they can recreate as well and run with other dogs and let them off leash and that kind of thing. And it's a huge trend now across the nation. Like dog parks, are very popular across the nation. Certain grants are available from things like Petco and other pet food distributors. They're providing grants now to help build dog parks across the nation for communities to utilize. So it's popular.
Of course, we can do just about anything that we want to do. It just takes money. Do you have some ideas about how we might be able to fund some of the improvements that are mentioned in the Parks Master Plan?
Absolutely. Like I said, with the grants, that's the number one thing out there right now is there's a lot of grant funding available. The city is available for some of it, but then again, if there's a 501c3 friends group established here in San Angelo, that's something that the parks staff has been working for in the past. They can apply for it and they can get funding. The half-cent sales tax, of course, has been used to fund some of the sports complex and other things. And I think some of the survey questions did ask citizens whether they felt like they should, how we should fund new improvements. And half-cent sales tax was a high priority there to utilize for those funds for parks. And then also, like I said, the fundraising from the private groups, the dog park lovers, or the skateboarding groups or the disc golf groups, all those groups can do their own fundraising to help generate funds to provide programs or improvements to the local parks.
You mentioned earlier about all the parkland that we have along our waterways, and this was the first Parks Master Plan that included the parks around Lake Nasworthy. Most notably, those would be Spring Creek Park and Middle Concho Park. Why was it important to include those parks as part of this plan?
It was important because previously there had been no mention of Lake Nasworthy parks in any of the master plans. And in fact, there was only 2 master plans previously to this one. And they're such a huge regional resource. People come from Midland, Odessa, and all over West Texas to enjoy these parks. They get a lot of use, and there hasn't been a lot of investment in them over the years. And there has never been a plan set aside to be a roadmap for the future. A lot of the facilities need improvements, and that was another thing that came out in the survey. A lot of citizens felt like improvements need to be made, and to restroom facilities, campground facilities, and people are willing to pay fees to increase capital investment in those parks.
Of course, this plan and another plan that we're going to talk about during the next segment, the Twin Buttes Recreation Use Plan, are both on the city's website at cosatx.us. /parks.
Yes.
So if people want more information, is there a way that you think they can access that best?
Like you said, online is the perfect way to look for it. I know you can always contact Carl White, the Parks and Recreation Director. You can contact myself, and he can also point you in the direction to get involved with one of the local stakeholder groups that are already out there. So we encourage all citizens to get involved.
We're talking with Lauren Shrum. She is the principal for Texas Outdoors Consulting. We'll be back in a moment to talk about a plan that she's written about recreation uses at Twin Buttes. But first, we're going to spotlight another outstanding city employee.
My name's Sean Nelsen. I'm the sports coordinator for the City of San Angelo. I've worked almost 9 years for the city now. I manage the sports complexes around town, mainly the Texas Bank Sports Complex, but we also do the soccer fields, the San Angelo Soccer Association fields, all the Little League fields, and a few parks here and there. Out here we do all the infield maintenance, all the grounds maintenance, everything from trash to pulling bases, setting up fences, all that stuff. And in the other areas, we mainly mow, weed eat. Fully staffed, we have 12 guys, 6 of them out here and 2 other crews of 3. They work diligently at getting everything done every week, and it's really a process. I mean, it's trying to switch off areas, you know, with rain and irrigation, just trying to keep up with everything. I get a lot of good feedback from everybody, from umpires to little kids up to the bigger kids, parents, coaches, teachers if they come out, you know, and it gives us a lot of pride in what we do, just to hear feedback. Oh, they love the infields, they love the grass, it's so squishy, and the infields are, you know, they'll slide without getting cut up, and the moisture level's there. Depending on what our responsibilities are, it could be everything from coming in the middle of the night and working all night long to get everything ready and brand new once again for the next day, to working all day long and managing the infields and the trash. You wouldn't believe the trash we get out here, and you know, just taking care of the infields after every game, every other game, chalking, you know, just keeping up with everything. It's something else, you know. And then when everybody leaves, that's when the real work happens. That's when the lights come on and everybody just splits up and gets to work. The guys that I have working out here and the guys I have working with me in general are really hard-working city employees, and they really get after it, you know. And when it comes down to it, it's a job that they can take pride in on a daily basis and not have to wait. We're the guys that our work is seen, but we're not supposed to be seen, and they enjoy that. There's no off season out here. We may have slower times, but there's no off season. We have winter adult leagues. We have some tournament play during the winter. There really is no off season. These guys hardly get a break or a time for a vacation. Since I started with the Parks Department, I've held many jobs. In 9 years, I started out just on a trash route, just like everybody else did back then. We did our route, we did a little maintenance, re-roof things, you know, playground maintenance, you know, after we got done doing our trash and restrooms and everything. Then I went to work with the projects crew. That was a lot of fun. And then went to work for work order maintenance after that, and did all the upkeep with the parks. And after all that, I went to work with the landscape crews before there was a ball field end of things. Went to work for the landscape crew at the specialty landscape, running the specialty landscape crew. Spend time with my family. I've got little kids and my wife. I love spending time. We like to swim. We've got a spot on the river. We like to swim in the river. We like to go fishing, kayaking. We like camping. I also like disc golf. We play a lot of disc golf. Gets me out into the parks here. We travel with a team for disc golf, so we get all around the state playing, and I just like to have fun. There's a few of us here that have worked here since before we even had grass, since before the fences went up and the infields were installed and everything. And you know, it was a really labor-intensive process, and we take pride in it because we help build it. And there's a lot of guys within the Parks Department that help build the complex, and I think they really just take pride in what they do. We've formed a bond, and everybody knows their part. We've accepted awards with the Texas Turfgrass Association Complex of the Year a few years back. That was a very proud moment for me because of the crews that I have working with us, and we couldn't do anything without everybody. It's all involved or nothing gets done.
Welcome back to the city. We are continuing our conversation with Lauren Shrum. She is a principal for Texas Outdoors Consulting. We were talking about the Parks Master Plan in the last segment. Now we're going to talk about another plan that she has drafted, and it is for recreational uses at Twin Buttes Reservoir. A recreational use plan for Twin Buttes. Talk about what it is and why it's important.
Well, recreational use plan is basically the same concept of a master plan. It's just a term that's used by federal agencies and things like that. And if you don't already know, Twin Buttes Recreation Area is actually owned by the Federal Bureau of Reclamation. So that's why the term was used there. But it was basically a process, again, like I said previously, in terms of master planning. We got together public stakeholders, all the different groups out there that utilize it, from mountain bikers to off-road riders to hunters to fishermen. Brought everybody to the table. We did a stakeholder workshop where we got their ideas for the future of what they thought that would be best use of the land, and how we can work together to invest monies and infrastructure into Twin Buttes and really make it the recreation area that it can be. Right now, currently, there's not much out there in terms of facilities, and so this plan really outlines new facilities that need to happen, new rules that need to be implemented, and some things going forward in terms of capacity building for these organizations to help adopt the park and fund and manage it with the city.
You mentioned that the Twin Buttes is owned by the federal government, and of course they contract with the city in order to manage that property. But maybe it's important first to talk about what Twin Buttes' primary purpose is, and it's not necessarily to provide recreation, but it's to provide a water resource.
Absolutely, yes. That's the primary reason Twin Buttes is here. It was built in 1963 by the establishment of the dam, and its main priorities are for flood control, irrigation, and municipal water supply. Now, it also offers many recreational opportunities, obviously, and a lot of people are utilizing that. However, the Bureau of Reclamation's priorities deal with water, and it's important to note that in terms of federal agencies, because a lot of other federal agencies, their priorities are different, such as the National Park Service. Their mandate sticks with recreation first and preservation first of the resource, and their mandate is different than the Federal Bureau of Reclamation.
And so whatever we want to do out there on a recreational basis, we have to have the approval of the landowner, which is the federal government, and abide by some of their guidelines in providing those uses.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why this process is important, because previously there was no recreation plan in place, and it's pretty much been a no man's land for many years, and the Bureau would like the city to kind of manage that. So we've put forth all these ideas in this plan.
Of course, it's a huge area. What do you think are the biggest opportunities for recreational uses at Twin Buttes Reservoir?
It is a huge area. It's a little bit over 12,000 acres. And there are tremendous opportunities, given the fact that it's in San Angelo's backyard. A lot of other cities don't have this opportunity, this public space to utilize. So there is opportunity for motorized trail recreation. Currently, that's already taking place. However, it's not through an approved process, and we're going through that process right now to make sure it's all approved and legitimized by the Bureau. There's a lot of mountain biking and trail running going on out there. There's a lot of kayaking and there's fishing going on. And there's hunting, and so there's plenty of opportunity. Given the fact that we live so close to it here in San Angelo, you go out there any day in the afternoon and spend the afternoon. And then it also brings in visitors. There are people who come from Abilene, from Midland, other places to come utilize that resource.
You talked a little bit about the opportunities. What about the challenges? You said it's a no man's land. What does that mean exactly, and what are the challenges out there?
Well, the challenges are it is a no man's land, meaning that there really wasn't a lot of regulation out there. There's no real rule structure. Vehicles can drive anywhere they like at this point, and really there needs to be a road infrastructure developed, and that is what part of the plan is about. There needs to be some rules established in terms of just types of hunting that's allowed, types of firearms that are allowed, where you can do that and make sure they don't conflict with other areas where people may be birding or biking. You want to decrease the risk of accident or injury or fatality in terms of motorized recreation versus non-motorized. And of course, a huge challenge is the water levels, lowering water levels. As we, are forever in this drought period, water levels are receding. Currently, no boat ramp reaches the water. So that's a constant challenge, and to continue to provide access to that water is important and something the city is working towards, and this plan definitely addresses, is to maintain access to that water. So whether that means our road infrastructure grows and continues to go down towards the water level, that's something that's included in this plan.
It sounds like when you talk about all the different competing uses out there that there could be, and the fact that there are so few rules that are enforced, that there could be a little bit of a clash of cultures out there. Do you think it's going to be difficult to start instituting some rules and having people follow those? Or are the users who are out there already eager for that sort of thing, so that there are some controls and some parameters?
By and large, the users that are out there are great users, and they do have Twin Buttes at best interest in their hearts, and they are utilizing the resource properly and appropriately. And there's a few people out there who do not follow the rules. A huge challenge is illegal dumping. People driving out there and dumping couches and construction trash and all kinds of things. And because there's been no man gates or no entrance requirements or anything like that, that's just gone unchecked. So the good users would like to see that unwanted behavior eliminated just as well as city staff would. And so that's why we need to work together. And that's what this plan calls for, is to work together with the stakeholder groups and city staff to enforce some rules. And of course, there'll be a little bit of pushback here and there from certain folks. That's just the nature of things. But by and large, the majority of stakeholder groups want to see this place cleaned up. They want to see it managed, and they want to be able to enjoy it for the future.
You mentioned all the different uses out there, and I wrote down a few of them, and they range from hunting and fishing, running and biking, birding, windsurfing is popular out there, ATV riding. How can all those uses coexist, particularly in a way that's safe for everybody involved?
Well, they absolutely can coexist. It seems like a lot, but they can. There's a lot of space out there, and they do coexist peacefully in many other parks out there in terms of national parks, state parks. So there are examples out there of where it works well. And basically, we've just proposed a few different recreation use zones, which just means we delineate what activities can take place in what areas. And So they're general zones. They cover large areas. We're not specifying, certain square miles. This is going to happen. This is not going to happen. But basically, we've divided it up into high-use impact zones where a lot of activity is taking place. A lot of boots are on the ground. A lot of cars are coming and going. That would be places like, when you first come in the parking area, in a boat ramp area, in a picnic area. But then we'll have primitive zones, which will be restricted to foot traffic only. You only be able to hike in or bike in or horseback ride in, and that will be for low impact activities like the hiking or birding or something like that. And it will not see the high impact that areas where vehicles are allowed will see. And then we'll have areas where hunting will happen, and we'll have areas where off-road use will happen. And all these different places will be designated on maps, and that allows for coexisting of all the groups, gives everyone a place to engage in their activity, yet eliminates the overlap that occurs now in some areas where there's potential for accidents. Say, there may be a single track trail, but it's not necessarily labeled as such, and someone could be coming the other direction on a motorized vehicle and crash into a non-motorized vehicle. Things like that. That's worst case scenario, of course, but there have been some incidents out there, close calls, and we want to avoid anything like that.
You mentioned about some of the illicit activity, and particularly the dumping, and there is some illegal firing of firearms out there as well. How can that best be controlled? I mean, are there going to have to be some controls as far as the ingress into the property, and are we going to have a bigger police presence out there? What all is involved with ensuring that it's a safe, comfortable environment?
Well, absolutely. The main criteria is going to be the control of the ingress and egress of the park, and that's one of the main tenets of the plan, is to control access to the park. We proposed manned gates. However, there's also interim stages that can happen, whereas the gates are closed and certain hours at night, unlocked during the day. Anything we can do to control vehicles that are just entering unfettered with loads of construction trash or mattresses or whatever it may be deters that kind of activity. So that's one of the main tenets of the plan, is to control the access in and out. Then we've also talked about having a park host program. And basically what that does is it brings in volunteers who come to the park, live on site an RV site, and in exchange for that RV site with electricity and water, they provide volunteer hours to the park. So they will help monitor the park. They'll be the eyes on the ground for city staff, and they help collect fees, they help clean up trash, they can monitor restrooms if investments are made in restrooms there at some point, and basically they help police the area.
It's such a large area. There's so many improvements that could be made out there. How would those possibly be funded?
Well, of course, funding is always the tricky part, and luckily, because the Bureau of Reclamation does own the land, they are willing to cost share on any kind of investments on a 50-50 cost share basis. Of course, given budget funds that are available, but that is an option for the city to utilize. And then we've also proposed in the plan to create a 501c3 friends group for the park as well. There is already such a strong base of stakeholders there. We are encouraging city staff to gather all those groups together and create one strong friends group. Basically, they adopt the park, become the group that fosters ownership over the park, cleans up things, self-polices it, helps be eyes on the ground. But then they also, when they get that 501c3 status, they're eligible for so many different grant funds that the city is not eligible for. So that will help bring in funding. Then there's also quite a bit of funding still available from Texas Parks and Wildlife, although this legislative biennium certain funding may not be available. There is motorized trail grants available, and those are funded through off-road vehicle decals that are now required. There's still boat ramp grants available, and that's another thing we can utilize that funding that's funded through gas taxes on boats and things like that. That's still available, and we can utilize that to continue to create access to the water, because that is the problem, obviously.
You segued perfectly into my next question, the access to the water. Of course, Twin Buttes is only about 5% of its capacity right now. How big of a hurdle is that in building improvements out there when the water levels are so low? In other words, is the public really going to buy into improving a property that only is at 5% of its capacity?
Well, I think personally, yes, I think the public's going to buy into it, because throughout this process, we found that the stakeholder groups, there is a big stakeholder group for fishing and kayaking and water-based activity like waterfowl hunting. However, there's huge groups associated with land-based activities, and it seems like while the reservoir was developed in the 60s for water, and it had its heyday, and maybe it will still have its heyday, let's hope for rain. However, it sort of shifted, and all these other groups are utilizing the area now, and there are tons of parks out there that have success with just land-based activities and no water available. So, I mean, the perfect example is Big Bend Ranch State Park in Texas. It's huge, thousands and thousands of acres of trails. They hold big mountain biking events there, things like that. So I definitely think that there is a future for Twin Buttes, whether there is water there or not, but let's hope there is.
We've been talking with Lauren Shrum. She is a principal with Texas Outdoors Consulting, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.